Okay, good morning, everybody. On behalf of Patton's statewide MTSS initiative, we're really pleased to feature East Juniata Elementary School within the Juniata County School District, who is going to be presenting on their efforts with beginning to implement Wor Generation with their middle school students. And so we're really pleased to acknowledge their efforts and give them a chance to share with the field where they are, some of their trials and tribulations with respect to implementation, and where they're headed, perhaps in terms of sustaining whatever they've done this year into the 23-24 school year. So my name is Jen Collins. I think I forgot to mention that. I'm joined by my colleague Sherry Hartman from the East, and we're very, very pleased to turn it over to Justin France, 6th grade social studies and science teacher from East Juniata Elementary School, who's going to talk about everything that they've learned up to this point and share with us so that we can get better at what we do. So thanks so much, Justin, for being willing to share with you and your team members, and we're going to turn it over to you and get started.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So this is kind of the slideshow that we put together for our presentation here with Wor Generations. Again, as it was said, we are from East Juniata Elementary. We are a rural school out in Juniata County. So we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that here as we slide along. Maybe. Our team members here in 6th grade are Mariah Huffman, who teaches math in 6th grade, and Megan Geedy, who teaches all of our language arts material. So we're the three that kind of help put this together. As far as our school demographics are concerned, we are a kindergarten through 6th grade school. We have roughly about 400 students total in the building, mainly Caucasian school with a few Hispanic and African-American students among us. And then the one thing to note is our economically disadvantaged, which we have at about 34% here. It's kind of funny that we are pretty much split male and female, about 50-50 right on. Again, that's kind of East Juniata in a nutshell. We kind of chose, obviously, this series, or it chose us, I guess is better to say, because we are all 6th grade teachers. So we wanted to implement it at our level and with the programs that we each teach. That way we could use our strengths with our core subjects and kind of help to tie that in with the Patton program. Okay. Next slide's a little bit about some successes and some of the challenges and whatnot. Kind of focus on some of the successes first. The one thing that we sat down and brainstormed about this, what was going well, and we were meeting about every month. We were kind of sitting down, kind of seeing the struggles, the successes, where we needed to changes and adapt and whatnot. And one thing that we've said over and over again is we love the wide variety of topics. In the past, when I've done things similar to this, some of the topics, at least for kids at our upper elementary level, just are not really relatable. And we felt with this that this was not the case at all. Every topic coming through, the kids could have a little fire in their belly with it. We're able to kind of get charged up. I mean, they've even caught us at recesses and lunches and whatnot saying, well, what's your take on this and that? And it's really interesting to see them kind of pushing each other a little bit. So we really love the topics and being able to kind of branch out with some different materials. So that was a wonderful success, we said. Of course, the vocabulary, that is the ultimate goal. We have heard multiple successes here about students using this language in everyday conversations. And that is neat to hear and see and kind of continue to build that. I know Mrs. Geedy's probably going to talk more about this, but she does have a word wall in her room that the kids reference and can use throughout the school year, which is really commendable and really neat to see. We said also, as far as I kind of touched on this already, but some of our core subjects, I was thinking, how you gonna put Wor Gen with science? That was one thing I knew when this coming into this that was on my mind, but at the same time, it works. They do roll it into some science, some experiments, some data, which is always nice to look at. And I know my colleagues, we kind of talked about the same deal with math and graphs and of course the vocabulary piece.
Yeah, let me add
Yep.
in there. One of my successes was there was a week where one of their vocab words was substitute. And we were talking about substitution in math class, and we were doing some algebra. So it was like this perfect correlation of these vocab terms, how they would have used it in real life, and also how we were using it in math class. I just thought it was perfect timing, and that it was really cool to see the students using it in math as well.
And it's really opened us up to a lot of good classroom discussions on a lot of heated topics that are, found in the world nowadays. It's really kind of helped some of the students break out of their shells a little bit. I would say early on in the year, more hesitancy, obviously to be expected, but as the comfort level grew, they really started to get involved. Even students that I know personally didn't think were going to be involved seem to kind of be putting their foot out there and going for it. So it's neat to see that positive step. And then finally, we kind of talked about the recognition using these words in different subject areas. I've heard them use terms during science, during social studies, and I kind of chuckled to myself thinking, that was one of your Wor Gen words. And so to see them kind of putting that together hand in hand is excellent. A few of the challenges that we came up with or we discussed was just like 99% of the things that we do in education anymore, it's just the time factor. I know it's not supposed to take up a large core of your subject per day, but I also do feel, at least I'm speaking from science and social studies, that aspect. I feel like if you want to do it right, it needs to. So that would be the only thing that's, would be some of the time concerns. But then other than that, I don't think we really had much to say as far as the challenges or the concerns. Moving
Justin,
on.
Sorry, Justin, could I get clarification? When you teach social studies and science, are you alternating or are you doing each of those daily?
We're alternating. So we'll do like every day 4 of our schedule, we do science, and then every day 5, we do social studies.
Okay. And were you doing Wor Gen every day within science and social studies, or once per week within social studies and science?
Yeah, once per cycle.
Once per cycle. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Geedy.
Okay, so I have the data piece here, and with the pre-test with the vocabulary words, we tested 44 students, and this was in September, and we had 16% of those students, which would have been 7 students, get the benchmark score 80% or higher. We did not have any students get 25% or lower. Then when we did the post-test, and that was done in January, we again tested the same 44 students. We had 12 students this time get an 80% or higher. So we bumped that up to 27%. We still had 0 students in the 25% or lower. So I was really excited to see that improvement, because anytime you do a program, like, we know that it's a good program and we were really enjoying the program and the kids are really enjoying the program, but to see the data just is, wonderful validation that, okay, yeah, this is working like we hoped that it would. And when looking at those scores, we found some really interesting things, because 9 of the kids not included in our data had 38s or 39s. So they were that close to the 40 out of 50, which is the 80% benchmark, which, I thought was wonderful progress too. Of the total kids, 37 out of 44 improved their score. So that was 84% that actually improved their score from the pre-test to the post-test. And then the most interesting piece of that, and to me, it's the most exciting part, because I just see, more and more progress in the future.
We are waiting on following students who are getting a reward this morning. If Owen Cab Mason Brubaker, Adeline Feltman, Cohen Kahn, Ethan Mall, Lucas.
This gives you an opportunity to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
To the office. Thank you.
Yeah, so the most exciting part of that is that 22 of the 50 words we have not even covered yet by the time of this presentation. So, I mean, I'm thinking with those kids that are so close to the 80% benchmark, you know, a few words away. And then we also have multiple students that are in the 30s. Like, I'm just so excited to see like where we are at the end of the year, because I plan on giving the vocabulary test then again closer to the end of the year. So again, you know, it's a wonderful program, and we're so excited with the progress in the vocabulary that we're seeing, as well as the other, you know, benefits that we're seeing as well.
I know I'm looking at your slide. Do you have somewhere where 84% of your kids made, you know, improvement? Do you have that somewhere? Did you capture it?
I mean, I have it in my room on a Post-it note.
I would definitely put that in here somewhere, that generally speaking, 84% of your kids made some improvement, you know, from fall to winter. So that's phenomenal.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely put that together in maybe a chart or something like that, that can show that. And then further down here, we give the percentage of students who reached proficient or above benchmark status on our benchmark assessment. We give the CDT here. So we took our data from that. So we had 57% there. And then we haven't given the CDT again for the spring. So we don't have any data yet for that. We like to wait till closer to PSSAs and when we're done with all of our instruction to kind of gauge, you know, maybe what we need to go back and work on before PSSAs. And I think Justin touched on this before. We at least met monthly, you know, to talk about Wor Generation, but you know, we talk about it much more often than that. You know, we have a common planning time that we can get together, and that's really beneficial for Wor Generation implementation too.
Yeah, it's nice to know that you don't have to have formal planned meetings to discuss WordGen. That collaboration around WordGen can happen on the fly. And when you implement things like Wor Generation or just work on multi-tiered systems in general, that collaboration that just happens informally, you know, kind of points to you're getting to the point where you don't have to have meetings to quote structure, you know, the conversation implementation. It's already a part of the way you do business. So you're just left with kind of tweaking on the fly, which is really nice. So kudos to be able to be in a position to do that.
All right, and then continuing on with some more data. 27% of our students scored an 80% or higher on the post test, and Megan kind of brushed up about saying how close some of our students were and that they had shown extreme growth and that they were really close to meeting that benchmark. And then our argumentative writing outcomes, we're gonna talk more about that, but students are able to present, claim, and support with their reasons. And they're really focusing on using their words in context correctly when they're writing. And then last, our students that scored below benchmark in the fall on our CDTs was 43%. So we're looking to see growth with those students as well, even in the CDTs, in the PSSAs on those tests as well. And then looking at our PVAS data, the performance for this current class has a growth index of 1.92 and a growth measure of 3.1. So we've been seeing them grow this school year. They are such a bright group. And it's been really fun to implement this program with them because they like absorb everything. So it's been awesome, and it's been really fun to watch them grow.
And I think Justin pointed to that at the very beginning, that the engagement is one of the first things that you see, and engagement is a, huge predictor, if not one of the major predictors of academic achievement. And so getting them kind of captured with those topics, especially, and Justin gets the fun part in the debate piece, but the fact that you're seeing the words generalized, they're talking about the words are showing up in their written products, speaks to the engagement. It's becoming internalized, and that should show up not only in your growth metrics, but like you're saying, in some of the summative measures you'll be giving in the spring. So that's really exciting, something to look forward to, and again, validate your efforts.
Definitely.
The next piece we are going to talk about is kind of the debate and the discussion part of the program, and this is my first year running this, so obviously new to this. So I wasn't sure quite kind of how to handle it, but it's been a good success. Early in the year, we would take the topics, and I do like how it starts off with an overview of the information, and then you work through the math and the data and the graphs, and then you kind of go through the science piece, and then you're ending with your debate and your writing section. I think that's good progress, good level of tiering. And so we would start off with your basic ideas as far as the debate would go. And it was a lot of just discussion and facts and information and whatnot. And then as we went kind of to the next section, then we actually started getting kids to say, okay, well, if you're part of this A group, move to this side of the room, move to this side of the room if you're part of the B group. And they would start to have these little mini discussions and debates back and forth. And all along, I was trying to teach them how to properly debate. And we kind of talked about the do's and the don'ts, and they really took to it as far as, waiting until the other person was done speaking, and not yelling out of turn, and using appropriate conversation with one another, and not name calling and all those things. So then they started to kind of develop those basics throughout the debate. And then what we rolled into here in January was we actually took a few debates. We really kind of honed in on it, that on a certain topic. I kind of picked topics that they were really fired up about. I know the one was like junk food and the cafeteria. That one had them all bundled up and exploding for some reason. And we took that one, and not only did they take their stance and their position, and they wrote their thoughts and feelings and opinions, but then we took it a step further as a team, and we decided to let them do some research. So they were actually getting on their iPads, and they were going to trusted websites, medical documents, and Harvard University. They were all pumped when they would get information from Harvard University. And they were having data that was supporting their side. And then we decided as a team to kind of do a full-blown debate, and we had the podium set up, and we had the A, B group, B, C, right on down through, and to watch them throw facts at each other. And sometimes they were willing to admit, like, to one side, like, okay, you raise a good point. I'll have to do some more research on that. They kind of knew, like, you got me. That was neat to see. And we kind of, to have a little bit of fun with it, not to get political, but we kind of looked at our last presidential debate, and we watched a clip of that. And even as sixth graders, they were recognizing, like, these guys they're not appropriate. And I'm like, exactly. And to kind of, and I get to be the moderator, which is kind of fun, but to kind of step in and lead that with them, with their roles, and to hear them be respectful of each other's opinions. And there's been countless times this year where they've been like, you know what, after further research, I would tend to sway more towards side, whatever. So that growth in the debate part has been absolutely the most fun for me. It does, like I said, it does take time to do that, but the couple of times we've done it so far, it has taken a few days of class, but it has been well worth it, in my opinion, to see them take the next level. I've loved that part of it. So we're going to try to do another full-blown debate before the end of the school year, now that they're kind of have gotten their feet wet a little bit with it, and kind of see what they are able to turn out on a couple future topics here. But at the beginning of the year, I would say they were probably more in the developing domain. And I would say lately they've been kind of moving into the adequate. They're really being mature about it, respectful, and not only just throwing opinions, being able to develop some facts too that we can actually have for data. So the comfort zone, as we've already talked about, has changed. The last debate we did, I was shocked. There were at least 3 kids that I thought they're never going to come to the podium. You wouldn't have, no way. And I couldn't believe it. Hands go up in there and they're like, I have something to add. And I'm like, yeah. So up to the podium they go. And I was pleasantly surprised, put it that way. So that's a real growth.
That is really neat. I hope you don't mind me asking some clarification questions, Justin. As far as, you know, the what we would call like pro-social debate skills, those arguing with people, right, in a professional manner, did you provide them with stems? Like, you know, how did you kind of nurture the appropriate way to debate professionally, so to speak, and create that, from your view, create that comfort level where kids felt safe, right, to argue, provide evidence to support their arguments, et cetera. But what did you do to kind of nurture that? Because when we think of engagement, it's not just the academic piece, it's the behavioral piece, them willing to come up to the podium, right, and the safety piece. So if you could speak to that a little bit more, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. So we kind of, like I said, we kind of took some debates and I showed them some clips and some videos of how not to debate. And even they were recognizing kind of the poor choices of the people that were debating. And we kind of made a list, discussed about, okay, pros, cons, you know, good, bad, ugly, whatever you want to call it. And then from there, we kind of started leading into a lesson. And again, this was a process, but we led into the discussion of, okay, well, what should we do as we are debating? And, you know, and the kids just kind of, we brainstormed together, we created lists, we created a document as far as, you know, writing down how we should behave, the language we should be using. And then we just continued to add to it throughout the year as far as, you know, well, I respectfully disagree with that argument and why, and then kind of throwing their argument in there. So kind of to deal with the writing piece and all that, kind of just taking what they've done in writing and evolving it into a little bit more of a debate scenario, if that makes sense.
Love it. So you did examples and non-examples of effective communication, and then you got all of the kids to own a working document that you built on that you provided support for their, you know, how they were going to approach the debates. That's awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I have the writing piece of the process, and I will just say, as far as what Justin said, like, it's wonderful to have the writing after the debate because, you know, that gives the kids an opportunity to really figure out how they feel about the topic. Because when we first get started with the issue, I also get it started on day 1 or day 2, where before we even read the article, we just look at the topic of the article, and we just give like an open discussion, like, what are your thoughts about this, you know, and that kind of thing. So we start that discussion piece on day 1 before we even read the article. Then we read the article and we highlight, they're all controversial issues. So then we highlight, you know, the text evidence for the one side of the topic. And then we take a different color and highlight the text evidence for the other side of the topic. So we really get that started that day. So they're thinking like how they do feel about that particular topic. But by the end of the process, after he does his debate on day 5, then on day 6, they're really ready to write. Like, they know exactly how they feel about the topic because, you know, they've already discussed it, done their research, debated about it, and that kind of thing. And I never get the question, like, how long does this have to be? Like, it's just like day 6, that's Wor Generation Writing Day. You know, I go over the words that they have to use just kind of as a reminder, and they just start writing like it. Now that's the point we're at now. So how we got to that point is I took, and this was an idea that I found when I did the Wor Generation program with Fayette several years ago. Somebody had like a simple rubric, like 10 points, where you have a thesis statement, which is your claim. And then you have to have,
6th grade, if you could start making your way to the buses for the play. Thank you.
I'm the lucky one to get the interruption. Yes. And then they have to have at least 3 reasons to support their claim. And then they have to use all 5 word generation words as the correct part of speech and using the correct context. So when we first started this process, for the first issue, I just kind of gave them that guidance and let them write and see what they came up with. And then, of course, when I looked at them, I realized that we needed to go back and model this. So I found some kids who, really did a good job as far as coming up with a claim that suited the purpose of the topic. They had good reasons. They used, the words correctly. And I took examples from each class and I projected them up for the whole class to see. And I highlighted, okay, this is the claim. Because a lot of times in the beginning, instead of just having a claim, they wanted to have a reason with the claim. And I was, no, we just need this thesis statement. This is your claim. So we highlighted that. Then we looked at the 3 reasons and they, I pointed that out. Then we looked at the words, and how they use the words. And so we just kind of went through it step by step. And after that, I noticed a huge difference in the amount of kids then that were able to pick up on the organization of the writing. And they had much better reasons to support their claim and were, excuse me, really doing a good job using the words correctly, in their writing as well. So I feel at this point, they're very good at writing a claim. They all have that down. They know how they feel. That's very clear. Most of the students at this point are proficient using their evidence to support their claim, but there still are some kids that are working on that because it is somewhat overwhelming to
5th grade, if you could now come down and load the buses for the play.
to also use those word generation words. So some of the kids are still kind of just trying to fit the words in, and I'm trying to get them to come up with their reasons. And then, we think, okay, here are your reasons. How can we fit these words in your reasons? So I feel like sometimes at the beginning, it was kind of backward, oh, I got to use these words. So they would just try to put these words in. But once we get the reasons, and then they think about how they can use those words in the reasons. The writing that I am getting with, it's just, I am extremely pleased. When I look at the development of their writing and the way they are able to use these words correctly and in context. I know we were in the teacher's room the one day and I showed her and I was like, look at this.
It's impressive.
And it's just so neat to see that kind of writing coming from a 6th grader. So
I love that you're articulating so nicely the goal of Word Gen, which is at the end of the week, the ELA teachers end with trying to see those 5 words manifest through, right, the writing at the end of the week. And sometimes that's lost in Word Gen, that teachers are not helping kids work through the process of getting from the words which are initially oral in nature, right? They're exposed to them, they're talking about them, the debate, all that, to then the height of comprehension, which is through written expression and purposeful, intentional, integrated written expression, right? And you're doing that, and that's a process, but you're seeing the success. So once the kids can produce those in a coherent passage or form of writing at the end of the week, those words have absolutely become internalized. And the fact that you're seeing that shows you that oral to written, connection has been formed. And so vocabulary predicts comprehension, but writing is the deepest form. And you're seeing that over the course of a week around these 5 words, and using research to support the overarching topic. So wow, I mean, that's really neat. And what I love is that you're going through the whole process, because sometimes we don't quite get there and make sure that kids are working toward integrating those 5 words, as the culminating event. So good for you in sticking through that and being able to witness it, because again, that's a testament to good teaching and high expectations.
Yeah, and Jen, if you let me jump in too, I just love the fact that you utilize their student writing kind of in the moment to teach that argumentative piece, because I think that's really helped to give you the quality of writing that you see now, is just taking the time to, intentionally walk the kids through that process and what they need to do using that student writing piece. Thanks.
Yeah. So our student surveys, we have been giving out to them to gauge their opinions weekly on how they feel. Where Jen is going as far as participation, respect that they feel while participating, and just general ideas like that. I feel like, and we discussed this too, that their surveys or their responses to their surveys, we're seeing like what they're putting on their surveys. Yeah, we see from the beginning of the school year till now, more kids participating, them recognizing that more of their classmates are participating. And that kind of creates this level of comfort, like, oh, if they can speak up, well, then I can too. And it's a safe space. We're just having a discussion. So that increase of participation and has really been beneficial in our classes. They're feeling more comfortable asking questions. Like, I love when they hear what their classmate is saying or peer is saying, and they're like, well, and then they ask them a question, and like it creates this conversation that just gets their brains really flowing, and the topic is being well discussed. So that also has been great for engagement and getting them sucked into that topic and really thinking about it. And Justin was talking about how they discussing how to debate properly. In my math class, we do looking at charts and all kinds of different math problems, and then there's always discussion at the end. So we take 10 minutes and have a discussion, and we always talk about what's a good discussion, how can we be good listeners, how can we show respect to our peers. And that is also being resulted in their survey. They're saying that they feel respect, they feel safe to share. And that makes you feel good, because you know that your students feel comfortable and they feel like they're in a safe space. So that has been great to see physically on a survey from them. That has been awesome.
I would love to just piggyback and also ask you a question around this whole issue of giving students ownership for their learning and creating an environment where they can learn from each other and control themselves in the process, right? On all fronts, And so how was it for you to be a true facilitator? Because you wouldn't have seen, I don't think you would have seen this kind of ownership for learning, discourse, all the things you're seeing if you weren't a good facilitator. So what was it like to maybe move from, you know, a direct role in teaching to more like a guide on the side, which is what you have to do to make Wor Generation look like what it is you're seeing with your kids? How was that for you? Was it easy? Was it difficult to not step in? Tell us about that.
It's definitely been a process, and I feel like one part of it has just been being consistent. So like we talked about how to have a good discussion, and like they're sixth graders, like they get excited and then somebody makes a comment and 2 seconds later everybody's talking, and you have to be consistent about, that's not how we're going to do this. We're going to rein it back in, and we're going to let one person speak at a time so that we can be respectful and listen to them. I think that has been like the kids know that that's the expectation, that's been consistently what is expected, and so that's how they need to be acting in class. But also, as far as facilitating it, sometimes like rewording the question or like reading it a second time has been beneficial, because the first time they're like, what are they asking or something like that, you know. But as we have gone through, they've been getting better and better at being specific and answering the specific discussion question that is on the Word Gen versus just randomly talking about the topic, you know, answering that specific question that is our discussion question. So that has been, it's definitely been a process, and you just do it every cycle, so it gets better and better as you go. But it is hard to not want to be like, well, and you know, and try and get in there, like just letting the kids ask the questions to each other and really facilitate it themselves has been great to see. I think that's beneficial for them.
Thank you for that. And I see you want to jump in too, just to kind of summarize, I think what you just said, which is this, it really is a melding of additional instruction as needed based on, you know, what you're seeing formatively. Where do I need to extend and refine a little bit, and then classroom management and reinforcement, you know, for appropriate behavior, and then some self-control on our parts as adults, because we're equally passionate about some of these topics. Yeah. So yeah, but go ahead, please add more.
Just real quickly, it's Clint Mitchell here. I've had the opportunity just to pop in occasionally to see this in action. And I think that the growth that these guys have had with these kids is just phenomenal. And one of the things, like, I don't think these guys give themselves enough credit. The scaffolding and the thoughtful, purposeful meaning, like when they sit down and give the students expectation, and they really make sure that the students see their vision of how this is going to look by providing examples. And it's been the gradual release of responsibility, but they have thought through and patiently expressed every explicit expectation they've had for the students, and to watch them do it and the kids' response. And I mean, that goes right back to the teachers and the expectations that they've been giving them. And it's been phenomenal to watch them do that. And that's why their students, I believe, are thriving like they are.
So thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Speaking of principal and leadership, I think what you're saying is, you know, collective leadership on the part of your team here, and really using that leadership to help students become leaders. So thank you for that. Anybody else want to add before you move to your next slide? Feel free.
I just wanted to say, like, because I start the discussion piece, I know that I have had to be very intentional about what I say. Like, I don't want them to get the impression that I don't agree with them, or I agree with, you know, a different side. So I find myself saying like, oh, that's a really interesting point. Or, you know, so that they all feel comfortable like expressing their views, and I never try to let them know how I feel about the topic, because I don't want to influence how they feel about it. So I think that has been a really something that I've had to learn. Like, sometimes I'm like, okay, how do I want to respond to this so that I don't, you know, discourage their thinking or anything. And I think it just really helps them too, like, go off of each other as well, because I hear, like, even in my discussion, like I hear some of Mr. Franz's, you know, responses that he was talking about, like, well, I hear what you're saying, but, and that's going on like in our discussion, like to begin the issues. And I'm like, whoa, like that's cool, you know?
Respect your opinion, so it's hard not to refrain. It's very hard to do that. So yeah, transparency there, and we hear it from all the adults who do Word Gen. Hard to just sit back and toss the football back to the student without interfering too much. Exactly, hard facilitation skill, but so important to continue to keep the ownership where it needs to rest primarily, which is with the kids. Thank you so much. Appreciate your feedback on that.
And this kind of piggybacks into the next slide, which is talking about the talks and the debates and the correct usage of how to debate. And we've kind of, like I said, with the biggest thing we've had with our talk move is we're trying to get them to the why position, and the opinion's great, but then we also have to take it a step further and implementing that vocabulary that goes along with it, and pushing more past, well, I feel because, and at this age, really trying to promote too that, I mean, no disrespect to anybody, but also they're at the age where they can start forming their own opinions and ideas on some of these very challenging topics. A lot of times, you know, it stems back to what they hear at home on certain topics, and rightfully so. But then they're at that age where they're starting to hear facts and information and develop their own. And we've had multiple students come up to us and say things like, well, we were sitting at dinner last night and mom and I were having a discussion about, and it was a Word Gen topic. And to hear that they're you know, talking about it at their dinner table and whatnot, that was interesting the other day when multiple kids came up and said that. And, you know, I know the first thing I said, well, were you respectful? They're like, oh yeah, I listened to their side of the, you know, I'm like, well, good, because they are putting you up house and home. But we also want to make sure that we are continuing to use those debate skills, not in just the classroom, but everywhere in life. So to hear that talk move of the why, and the beginning of the year, it was a push. It was, well, I don't know. That's my opinion. Well, okay, well, why are you saying that? I'm not sure. But now to get them more engaged, you hear more of that intelligent, we call them, you know, rebuttals, and, you know, even kids will raise their hand and say, well, I would like to respectfully, you know, discuss that. I'm like, okay. So like they said, to kind of take yourself out of it. We do the same thing with the debate. I don't ever let them know my side of the viewpoints. And sometimes, honestly, between us, I don't know which side I stand on. So it does make it easy to say, well, but to hear them actually rebuttaling one another, that's more where the talk moves have gone, as we've kind of said throughout this program, to rephrase their stance, have a deeper reasoning of why they're taking that position, if that makes sense.
Sure. You know, I think from our presentation, you can tell we're very pleased with the Word Generation program and the benefits that we've seen with our students. So we plan to keep continuing doing what we're doing, improving where we need to, and taking any suggestions that anybody has as far as what we are already doing. We have, like Justin said, I have a word wall in my room. We also have the words read on the announcements each day, you know, to add to that exposure of the words. But again, we're just very pleased with what we have seen and the growth that we've seen from our students in many aspects.
Anything more to add? I don't want to step in and unless is this anything else you want to add?
And just a couple pieces, I think, like, you know, and looking at the presentation and like kind of starting from where we started at the beginning of the year to now, Mrs. Geedy has been doing word generation in her classroom for some time, but like the spread across all the contents in the classroom, getting it onto the announcements, including the discussion pieces across the different content levels, I really think that the learning that the students are doing is going to be something that sticks with them, with skills that they're going to be able to remember as they're part of their learning, and the engagement with what they have. Like these guys, that they've really just helped them to become an active part of their learning, which is, it's so neat to see the engagements there, the excitement's there with the kids. And I loved how Mr. Franz had talked about like the time that it takes to do that. But you can also hear the value of their learning. And whenever like these guys express like some of the learners within their classroom, it's just so neat to see how some of the real leaders have an opportunity to really express their ideas, and kind of how that's contagious to some of these other students that are like, hey, I actually can feel comfortable and being able to back up like what my thoughts are with some facts and why I feel this way, and being able to share with their peers is just to attest like how much these guys have worked with them and expressed a safe environment for all the students to share. I think also with our last Act 80 Day, I think also just another piece, like with our presentation, we talked at the very beginning of our demographics and our economically disadvantaged piece. The last year's reporting was lower than you typically see already with our numbers. You know, we're well over 50% economically disadvantaged. So just wanted to make sure that like that part is shared with our demographics. That snapshot was lower than we traditionally see with our student population. And the other exciting part is that, you know, at the beginning of the year, not all of us were able to participate in the word generation training, but they were able to work closely together, catch each other up to speed, be able to take additional time and look at the word generation, how it works, and work together to make this all happen. And at our last Act 80 Day, Mrs. Geedy was working with two of our fourth grade teachers to like start implementation, and our hopes would be then to spread across fourth, fifth, and sixth as well.
That's exactly what I was wondering. But just to summarize, Mr. Mitchell, what you said, I mean, we heard just you're so proud of this team, and with very little outside training and TA, they kind of took it and ran with it, which is really exciting. I know you have some experienced folks on your team, but it still takes initiative. And you mentioned that they did such a fabulous job facilitating self-regulated learners using this tool and all the other skills that they bring to the table as a team. You also mentioned that you like that this is something that gets the involvement of all content area teachers, right, to enhance engagement, academic vocabulary, and comprehension across the content areas. And they absolutely have to work as a team to make it work. So you also mentioned that. And finally, you answered my question, which is, I know that sixth grade is probably at the top of your elementary school, but were you interested in pushing, scaling it down, so to speak, to Word Generation Elementary, which would be grades 4 and 5? And it sounds like you might be headed in that direction. So the more you have grade levels involved in Word Gen, the greater the impact, you know, across building wide data. So the fact that you're kind of thinking about moving it down to 5th and 4th grade at some point is really exciting. So that's prevention land for sure, you know, as it relates to vocabulary, comprehension, and writing skill development, and the overarching piece of the academic engagement, or the full-fledged engagement in this case. So that's really, really exciting to hear. We are more than pleased to be able to share this presentation on Pat and YouTube. So we recorded this, and we will also share your PowerPoint presentation so that people have a handout, you know, to guide them as they're viewing this. And then are you open to anyone reaching out if they have questions about your Word Generation implementation? Can we kind of give them your contact, Mr. Mitchell, or the team's contact? Would that be okay?
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yep, we're fine with that.
Okay, and we may be circling back to see kind of where you are for next year. And if you make this sort of a whole building effort, we'd really be interested in getting together with you again to learn about, you know, where you are with 5th and 4th grade outcomes and just holistically as a building. So we'd be really interested in revisiting that with you and learning through you so that we can share with the field. So thank you again, Sherry. I don't know if you had any sort of parting comments or thoughts to share, but we're just thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better team to showcase Wor Gen implementation. I know that you know, I think that their efforts have I think that they have been able to see those student growth. I think that really speaks to the their efforts and dedication to Wor Gen implementation.
I'm hearing distinguished all around. Okay, well, thank you so much. We're going to stop the recording. So Sherry, you can do that. And East Juniata, if you want to hang on for just a second.